The sound of laughter filled the school hallway as Melfa walked past the lockers. She kept her head low, clutching her worn-out books against her chest. Her shoes had holes at the tips, and her uniform looked older than everyone else's. It was not because she wanted it that way, but because her family had no money to buy new ones. One of the girls from the popular group raised her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at her clothes. She looks like she picked them up from the trash." Another student added, "Maybe that is why she always smells like old paper." The laughter roared even louder, echoing inside Melfa's chest like knives stabbing her heart. Melfa walked faster, pretending she could not hear them, but their words clung to her skin like poison. She reached the corner of the hallway where her only friend, Liza, waited with worried eyes. Melfa whispered, "Why do they always do this to me, Liza? I never bother them." Liza placed a hand on her shoulder. "They are jealous because you are smarter than them. But still, I know it hurts. You should ignore them." Melfa shook her head slowly. "Ignoring does not erase the pain. Every word they say stays inside me." When she entered the classroom, the teacher was already writing on the board. Melfa sat at the last desk, hoping no one would notice her anymore. But during the lesson, one of the boys tossed a crumpled paper at her head. She unfolded it with trembling hands. Inside, the words were scribbled cruelly. "You will never be someone important. You will always be nothing." Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, but instead, she swallowed her tears. After class, she walked home along the dusty road. The houses of her classmates stood tall and painted, but her own house was nothing more than cracked walls and a broken roof. Her mother was already outside, sewing clothes for neighbors to earn a little money. Her mother smiled faintly. "Melfa, you are home. How was school today?" Melfa forced a nod. It was fine, but her mother knew better. She saw the sadness in her daughter's eyes. She whispered, "One day, those who laugh at you will see your worth. You just have to believe in yourself." Melfa sat beside her, holding her mother's tired hands. "I do not know how long I can take this." Her mother looked at her with firm eyes. "Life will not be easy, Melfa, but remember this. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Maybe you are under pressure now, but you will shine later." That night, lying on her small bed, Melfa stared at the ceiling. The words of her classmates echoed in her mind, but so did her mother's voice. A fire began to burn inside her heart. She whispered to herself, "I will not let their words define me. Someday, they will know my name." The next morning, the sun rose gently over the small town, but for Melfa, it felt like another battle. She was forced to fight. She walked to school with heavy steps, as if the earth itself wanted to swallow her before she reached the gates. Liza waited near the entrance, waving to her. Liza smiled softly. "Did you do the homework from last night? I struggled with the math problems." Melfa handed her notebook. "Here you can check my answers. I am not sure if they are right though." Before they could exchange more words, the popular group appeared again. Their leader Clara smirked. As she looked Melfa up and down, she said loudly for everyone to hear, "Do you even own a mirror? Melfa, your hair looks like a bird nest." Another girl chimed in. "Maybe she does not care, because no one will ever want to look at her anyway." The crowd laughed while Liza's face turned red with anger. "Stop it," she shouted. "You are being cruel." Clara laughed louder. "We are just telling the truth. People like her should learn to stay invisible." Melfa grabbed Liza's wrist. "Do not fight them. It will only make things worse." But deep inside, Melfa's chest burned. Each insult was like a chain pulling her deeper into the ground. During music class that day, the teacher announced that there would be a talent showcase at the end of the month. Every student could join and present something they were passionate about. The classroom buzzed with excitement. The teacher smiled. "Singing, dancing, playing an instrument, anything you like. This is your chance to shine." Melfa sat quietly, but her heart raced. She had always loved singing since she was a little girl. At night, she often sang softly to herself when no one could hear. But the idea of standing on stage in front of those who mocked her filled her with terror. Liza nudged her. "You should join Melfa. I know your voice." "It is beautiful," Melfa whispered back. "They will laugh." Liza shook her head. "No, if they laugh it means they are afraid. You should show them your strength." All day, Melfa could not focus. The idea of the talent showcase haunted her. At home, while her mother worked late into the night, she stood in front of a cracked mirror in her room and sang softly. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew steadier, filling the small space with unexpected warmth. Her little brother peeked in from the doorway, clapping his hands. "Melfa, you sound like the singers on TV." Melfa blushed. "Do you really think so?" "Yes," he replied with a bright smile. You should sing for everyone." For the first time in weeks, Melfa felt a spark of hope. Maybe this showcase could be her chance. Maybe it was the beginning of something greater. That night, she closed her eyes with the decision carved deep into her heart. She would face the stage, no matter how much fear tried to hold her back. Days passed quickly and soon. The entire school was buzzing about the upcoming talent showcase. Posters were placed on the walls, and students practiced during breaks, showing off small glimpses of their performances. Some danced in the corners, others played guitar or rehearsed poetry. The atmosphere was filled with energy, but for Melfa, it was filled with fear. She sat at her desk, chewing the end of her pencil, while her thoughts raced. Her heart wanted to sing, but her mind reminded her of the cruel laughter that followed her every move. Liza leaned closer. "Have you decided yet, Melfa? Are you going to sign up?" Melfa shook her head weakly. "I am not brave enough. If they mock me on stage, I will not survive it," Liza replied firmly. "That is exactly why you need to do it. You cannot live your whole life hiding from their voices. Let them hear your voice instead." Melfa lowered her gaze, silent, but inside something stirred. Later that afternoon, Clara and her group caught Melfa near the school gate. Clara crossed her arms with a cruel smile. "I heard there will be a showcase. Surely you will not embarrass yourself by joining, right? Everyone knows you cannot do anything." Her friends laughed loudly. One added, "If she dares to stand on stage, the audience will probably fall asleep." Melfa clenched her fists but said nothing. She simply walked away, her ears burning. At home, she entered her small room and shut the door. She stared at the cracked mirror, her reflection tired and defeated. Yet she whispered softly to herself, "Why am I letting them decide who I am? I have a voice. I have a dream." She took a deep breath and began to sing. Her voice wavered at first, but then it grew, filling the silence with raw emotion. Her little brother leaned against the doorframe again, listening quietly. When she finished, he said, "You sound even better than last night. You cannot waste this." Melfa looked at him and felt tears rise in her eyes. "Do you really believe in me?" "More than anyone," he replied. That night she wrote her name on a small slip of paper and prepared it for the sign-up list. Her hands shook as if she was about to step into fire, but her heart felt alive. The next morning, she walked to the bulletin board in the hallway. Students crowded around, laughing and chatting, pointing at names already written. She swallowed her fear and pressed her slip onto the board. Some students noticed and whispered, "Is she serious? She thinks she can sing." But Melfa did not look at them. For the first time, she walked away with her chin slightly raised. She was terrified, but the decision was made. There was no turning back. Once her name was on the board, there was no escape. Whispers followed Melfa through the hallways. Some students sneered when she passed, while others giggled behind their hands. Clara's group was the loudest. They said things like, "Wait until she opens her mouth on stage," and "Everyone will laugh so hard they will remember it forever." Liza tried to shield her with comforting words. "Ignore them, Melfa. Focus on your practice. You have a gift, and you must protect it." Melfa nodded, though her stomach felt twisted with fear. Each day after school, she went home, closed her bedroom door, and sang. She practiced old songs her mother used to hum when cooking. She practiced new songs she heard on the radio. She recorded herself, with a small broken phone to hear every mistake and every note that faltered. One evening as she practiced, her mother stopped by the door. She listened quietly, then stepped in with tears in her eyes. "That voice is not ordinary, Melfa. Promise me you will not give up." Melfa lowered her gaze. "But what if they laugh at me in front of everyone?" Her mother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let them laugh if they wish. Laughter fades, but true talent shines forever." At school, Clara grew more determined to destroy her confidence. During lunch, Clara walked by Melfa's table and said loudly, "I heard you are practicing. Do not waste your time. The stage is for stars, not for shadows like you." Melfa stayed silent though her heart pounded. Liza replied sharply, "We will see who the shadow is, Clara." Clara smirked. "Do not forget, I will be on that stage too. And when the audience sees me, they will forget you ever existed." The pressure grew heavier each day. Melfa sometimes cried into her pillow at night, questioning if she had made the right choice. But every time she remembered her brother's innocent eyes and her mother's firm words, she wiped her tears and continued. One afternoon, while walking home, she passed a small community center. Music drifted from inside and she paused. A group of children were practicing choir. Their teacher noticed her standing shyly and invited her in. "Would you like to join us for a song?" Melfa hesitated, but then stepped inside. When she sang along with the children, Her voice blended beautifully, yet stood out with a power that surprised even her. The teacher smiled. You have a natural gift. With training, you could be remarkable. For the first time, Melfa felt like she belonged somewhere. She thanked the teacher and walked home with her heart lighter. The showcase was still terrifying, but a new thought had taken root. Maybe her voice was not just a dream. Maybe it was her path. The days before the showcase grew shorter, and the air in school was filled with nervous energy. Posters counted down the days, while students whispered about who would impress the most. Clara's group practiced openly in the gym, blasting music and showing off their dance routine. Crowds gathered to watch them and clap along. Clara thrived in the attention, tossing her hair and saying loudly for all to hear that she would steal the spotlight. Melfa avoided those gatherings, choosing instead to practice alone in her small room, or sometimes at the community center. When the teacher allowed, each time she sang, her voice grew stronger, steadier, filled with emotions she had buried for so long. But doubt still crawled into her mind at night like a shadow. One evening, Liza came over with a notebook in her hand. I wrote down some tips I read online for stage fright. She handed the pages to Melfa. Breathing exercises, visualization, focusing on one person in the audience instead of the whole crowd. Try them, they might help. Melfa smiled faintly. Thank you, Liza. I do not know what I would do without you. Liza laughed softly. You would still shine. I am just here to remind you. At dinner that night, her mother served simple rice and vegetables, but she noticed Melfa barely ate. What troubles you, daughter? Melfa whispered. What if I forget the lyrics on stage? What if my voice breaks? What if they laugh? Her mother answered firmly. What if they stand and clap? What if you make them cry with your song? What if tomorrow you begin a new life? You cannot know unless you try. Her little brother chimed in with bright eyes. I will be in the audience cheering louder than anyone. If someone laughs, I will boo them away. Melfa laughed for the first time that day. The warmth of her family gave her courage. At school the next day, Clara cornered her again. She leaned close and hissed, do yourself a favor and drop out before you embarrass yourself. No one wants to hear you squeal on stage. Melfa met her eyes for the first time without lowering her gaze. Maybe you are right. Maybe no one wants to hear me. But I will sing anyway. Clara blinked, surprised by her sudden strength. She scoffed and walked away, but her confident mask seemed thinner than before. As the final week before the showcase arrived, Melfa stood in front of the cracked mirror again. She touched her chest and whispered to herself, this is not just about singing. This is about proving that I am more than their insults. Her reflection looked back at her, no longer just a frightened girl, but someone slowly discovering her fire. The day of the showcase arrived at last. The school auditorium was decorated with bright banners and filled with rows of chairs. Students, teachers, and even parents gathered, their voices buzzing like a restless hive. Backstage, the performers lined up nervously, adjusting costumes and practicing lines. Melfa stood in a corner, clutching her folded sheet of lyrics. Her hands trembled, and her chest felt heavy. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe, as Liza had taught her, counting slowly. But her legs still shook, as if they might give out. Liza appeared beside her, placing both hands on her shoulders. Remember what we practiced. Look at me if you get scared. Just one person. Forget the rest. Melfa nodded weakly. I do not know if I can do this, Liza. My heart feels like it will explode. Liza whispered firmly. You can. You will. Because this is your moment. From the other side of the curtain, Clara's laughter rang out. She strutted past in a glittering costume, her friends following like shadows. She smirked at Melfa, ready to humiliate yourself in front of everyone. I hope you have tissues for when you cry. Melfa swallowed hard but did not reply. She turned back to Liza, whose steady gaze gave her strength. One by one, the acts went on stage. There were dancers, guitar players, even a magician who made the crowd laugh. The applause filled the air, and the lights blazed hot. Each moment brought Melfa closer to her turn. Finally, the announcer called her name. The words echoed in her ears like thunder. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to step forward. The stage lights blinded her as she walked into the center. The microphone stood waiting like a challenge. She glanced at the crowd. For a heartbeat, she saw the sneers, the whispers, the eyes waiting for her to fail. Fear wrapped around her throat, threatening to choke her. She nearly turned to run. But then her eyes found Liza in the front row. Liza's hands were clasped, her face glowing with encouragement. Behind her, Melfa saw her mother and little brother, their smiles wide, their hope shining. Melfa took a deep breath. The first note slipped from her lips, shaky and soft. A few students chuckled from the back. Her stomach twisted. She closed her eyes, remembering the nights in her small room, the cracked mirror, the words of her mother. She let her heart open. The second note rose stronger. The third poured with emotion. Her voice began to soar, filling the auditorium with warmth and power. The laughter faded. The audience grew silent. Melfa opened her eyes, no longer trembling. She was not just a girl being mocked. She was a voice, a soul, a storm finally unleashed. The silence in the auditorium felt endless as Melfa's voice rose higher, trembling no longer, but steady like flowing water. Each lyric carried the pain of her past and the fire of her determination. The spotlight bathed her in gold, making her seem different from the girl who used to hide at the back of the classroom. In the first rows, some students leaned forward, their smirks fading. Even the teachers exchanged surprised glances. The girl they had all ignored was commanding the entire room. Clara sat stiff in her chair backstage, gripping her glittering costume. Her friends whispered nervously, "She actually sounds good. Better than good." Clara hissed back, "No, she's just lucky. She will break any moment." But Melfa did not break. With every verse, her confidence grew. She opened her arms, pouring everything into the song. Her mother's tired smile, her brother's innocent cheer, Liza's unwavering loyalty, all of it blended into her voice. When she reached the final chorus, her voice soared so high it echoed across the walls, sending shivers through the crowd. People who once mocked her now sat in silence, captivated. The sound was raw, pure, and undeniable. When the last note faded, for a heartbeat there was only silence. Melfa's chest heaved, her eyes glistening. Doubt clawed at her for a second. Had they hated it? Would they laugh again? Then a single pair of hands clapped. Liza stood tall in the front row, clapping with all her strength. Her little brother jumped up, cheering loudly. Their energy was contagious. One by one, the audience followed, until the entire auditorium roared with applause. Melfa's breath caught. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. She had dreamed of this, but never believed it would happen. Backstage, Clara slammed her hand against the wall. "This cannot be real. How can she steal my moment?" The announcer returned to the stage, smiling wide. That was Melfa, everyone. A truly breathtaking performance. Melfa bowed awkwardly, tears spilling down her cheeks as the applause continued. For the first time in her life, the laughter was gone. Instead, the sound that filled the room was admiration. After the show, students who once ignored her approached. Some said nervously, "You were amazing." Others simply looked at her with awe. Liza rushed to her side and hugged her tightly. I told you your voice would change everything." Melfa whispered back, still shaking, "I cannot believe this is real." But it was real. For the first time, Melfa stood not as a shadow, but as someone shining in her own light. The showcase ended, but its echo did not fade. The next morning at school, whispers followed Melfa again, yet they were no longer filled with cruelty. Instead, students said things like, "Did you hear her voice?" and "I never knew she could sing like that." Some even smiled at her when she passed. It felt strange, almost unreal, to walk through the same hallways that once echoed with laughter, and now buzzed with admiration. Liza beamed with pride. "Look at them, Melfa. Yesterday they called you nothing. Today they cannot stop talking about you." Melfa whispered softly, "It feels like a dream, but I do not want it to end." Clara, however, was furious. She stood near her locker, surrounded by her group, her face stiff with jealousy. "Do not be fooled," she told them. "One song does not make her special." The audience was just in a strange mood. Next time she will fall. Her friends nodded uncertainly, but Clara's words did not carry the same power as before. Later that week, the community center teacher called Melfa aside. "I heard about your performance at school. People are talking about you. There is an audition in the city for young talents. You should try." Melfa's eyes widened. "Me? But the city is far and full of real singers. I am just a girl from this town." The teacher shook his head. "You are not just a girl. You have a gift. Do not waste it." When she told her mother, the woman's eyes filled with both pride and worry. "The city is another world, Melfa. It will not be easy. There will be rejection and hardship. But if this is your dream, you must follow it." Her little brother clapped his hands. "I want to see you on TV one day." That night, Melfa lay awake staring at the ceiling. The thought of leaving her small, fragile world terrified her. Yet a deeper voice inside whispered that she could not stay hidden forever. At school the next day, Clara confronted her in the hallway. "Do not think you are a star now. You will fail the moment you leave this place." Melfa looked at her calmly. "Maybe I will fail, but at least I will try." Clara's smirk faltered, but she quickly turned away. Melfa felt her chest tighten with fear of the unknown. But she also felt something new, something powerful. It was not just hope. It was determination. The road ahead promised struggles greater than anything she had faced. Yet deep in her heart, she knew she was ready to take the first step toward a larger stage. The city was louder and brighter than anything Melfa had ever known. Cars roared past. Billboards flashed with faces of famous stars, and crowds hurried with eyes fixed ahead. Melfa clutched her small bag tightly, her heart pounding with both excitement and fear. Liza had insisted on coming with her for support, and together, they stepped into the building where the auditions were held. Inside, the waiting room was filled with young hopefuls. Some warmed up their voices. Others stretched or flipped through sheet music. Everyone seemed more confident, more polished, as if they were born for the stage. Melfa sat quietly in the corner, her hands trembling. She whispered to Liza, "What if I am not good enough? Look at them. They belong here. I do not." Liza held her hand firmly. "Do not compare yourself to them. You have your own fire. Remember the showcase. Remember how you silenced them." When her number was finally called, Melfa walked into the audition room. 3 judges sat behind a long table, their expressions unreadable. The lights above her were harsh and cold, so different from the warm glow of the school auditorium. One judge spoke in a stern voice. "Name." Melfa answered softly. "Melfa." "Talent?" "Singing." "Begin." Her throat tightened. For a moment, she thought her voice would fail her. But then she remembered her brother's cheer, her mother's words, Liza's steady eyes. She closed her eyes and began to sing. The first verse was quiet, but filled with emotion. As she continued, her voice rose stronger, carrying the weight of her journey, the years of humiliation, the fire of her dreams. The room seemed to change. Even the strictest judge leaned forward slightly. When the last note faded, silence lingered. Her chest ached as she waited. One judge scribbled notes, another whispered to her colleague. Finally, the center judge spoke. "You have potential. Raw, but powerful. With training, you could go far." Melfa's knees almost gave out. She bowed quickly, tears threatening to spill. "Thank you." Outside, Liza hugged her tightly. "I knew you could do it." But Melfa whispered. They did not say yes. They only said potential. Liza smiled. "That is more than most people ever hear. It is the door. Now you must walk through it." As they left the building, Melfa looked up at the towering billboards once more. For the first time, instead of feeling small, she felt a spark of belonging. Maybe one day, her face would shine up there too. The night of the premiere finally arrived, and the city was buzzing with anticipation. Melfa stepped out of the car onto the red carpet with cameras, flashing like 1,000 stars, exploding around her. She wore a gown that seemed to glow under the lights, and her name was shouted by fans, who lined the barricades holding posters with her face. The girl who once walked the school corridors, with her head down, was now walking with unshakable confidence. Inside the theater, the atmosphere was electric. Critics filled the rows, while producers whispered about her talent and future projects. The screen lit up, and as the movie played, every scene with Melfa drew gasps of admiration. Her performance was raw, emotional, and unforgettable. When the credits rolled, the audience erupted into a standing ovation that lasted minutes. Melfa stood in front of them, tears in her eyes, bowing deeply. In the crowd, she spotted some of her old classmates, including the ones who had mocked her years ago. Their eyes held a mixture of regret and disbelief. They now saw the star she had become, while they were still trapped in ordinary lives weighed down by the cruelty of their past actions. Melfa did not need to say a word because her success spoke louder than any insult they had ever thrown at her. Later that night, as she stood on the balcony, overlooking the city, Melfa let the cool wind wash over her. She remembered every tear, every lonely night, and every cruel word. But instead of bitterness, she felt peace. She had transformed her pain into power, her shame into strength. She realized that true revenge was not in hurting those who hurt her, but in proving that nothing could stop her destiny. Melfa whispered softly to herself, "I am no longer the girl who was mocked. I am the woman who conquered." With that, she smiled, lifted her head high, and walked back into the glow of her new life, a life filled with purpose, fame, and the undeniable proof that she had risen above it all.